Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see a Friday morning. Shadra, thanks for opening your door so we can hear the birds chirping. That's great. Um, I'm George Brown, the Executive Director with the Highlights Foundation. This has been the bright spot in my week to have these three sessions, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And just so thankful, Shadra and Kelly, for joining us. Allison, will you get us started?
Sure, I'd love to. Welcome to everyone to our first Illustrator hosted Highlights Foundation Gather. We're grateful to have Shadra Strickland and Kelly Light gather with us this morning to talk about style and sketches and even pose a challenge to our illustrators following the webinar. Shadra is a teacher, an agent, an author, an illustrator, rich in talent and generosity. We love her words and her art. One of my favorite pieces in my home is hanging in my living room. It's from Shadra's work. And I really can't wait for the forthcoming Jump In. It can't get here soon enough to add to the collection of books that I love of Shadra's. And we can't wait for that. So welcome to Shadra.
Thank you.
Kelly Light is a cartoon lover and an author and an illustrator and a teacher and a traveler. Kelly's Louise series speaks to young artists from the heart. I can only imagine kids at home right now with any of their favorite Louise books on their bellies, on the floor, sketching their pets with love. And as Kelly says, art is that imagination on the outside, and that's really needed now more than ever. So we're grateful to kick things off with our Illustrator Gather with Kelly Light and Shadra Strickland. I'll turn things over to the two of them.
Awesome. Good morning. I see someone saying that they can't see Kelly, so I'm hoping that
Can't see me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It may just be that the videos are.
I see you, Kelly. That may be someone else chime in the chat, though, but it may be Karen's setup.
Okay, so everyone can see. All right. So Kelly, how are you?
I'm doing okay considering, and you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I think, we were talking earlier about sort of the makeshift studios and offices that are being set up. And I know that's certainly true for a lot of students, a lot of young artists that have had to leave campuses and go back home and things like that. So what has that been like for you, and just trying to what have your priorities been in terms of trying to set things up to be sort of manageable at this time?
Yeah. So yeah, I have a studio outside of the home, and it's in I'm up here in Massachusetts, and a lot of these giant old mills that they had up here in Massachusetts have been converted into condos, or there's a lot of artists up here, and there's a lot of artists who rent these giant spaces for studios. Yeah. So in January, I rented a studio to really focus on this one particular book that I've been working on for a long time. And I rented the studio, I set up the studio, I fell in love with being in the studio from January until about 10 days ago. Yeah. And then about 10 days ago, we all know everything kind of stopped. Yeah. So yeah, I had to, one day I said, well, I don't need that much because I can come back and get a few other things. So I brought home a watercolor pad, 2 pads of vellum, which is what I like to sketch on.
Okay.
4 pencils.
Nice.
4 paintbrushes, 1 kit of watercolors, 1 pencil sharpener, and I could even open and this eraser.
I love it.
Luckily, I had my kids' drafting table was still here at the house.
Oh, great.
So I set it up in what is kind of the pantry.
Okay.
This is the makeshift studio.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
We got the bare essentials.
The bare essentials. I mean, this is, and I even have my art bin from college, because I mean, I don't even know, kids even carry these things anymore?
Yeah, they do. I still have my art bin. It's it's underneath.
I dug it out because I was like, well, what art supplies are still lurking in my art bin? And I opened it up and I was like, oh, gouache, there's gouache.
I love it.
Yeah, it's I don't know, in some ways I think in some ways it's good. I think
Yeah.
it's nice to strip away
Yeah.
a lot of the other stuff that you think you need.
Right.
The digitalness of what I need to do, that's a little.
Yeah, so that goes into just working process and style. Like the book that I'm working on now, that is just the bane of my existence. It hurts. Everything hurts. It's my first like full digital book, and they're just an endless amount of choices, right? And I know for you, your style is really specific, right? In what you do in terms of characters and continuity and in that. But for me, like I've always been an artist who plays around and works in different styles, different voices for everything. And this one is taking so long because I just can't like settle in. Just when I think I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it like this, then I'm like, oh, I should try painting this texture and da-da-da. So I'm just sort of giving myself over to all of that.
Right,
and,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, digital is an endless rabbit hole. It really can be. The way that I use it with the Louise books is very specific. So I wind up like, okay, I have the few brushes that I made in Photoshop. The lines are all done in black Prismacolor pencil and scanned in. So that's pretty streamlined. But the book that I'm working on now, it's all based on old photographs.
Okay.
And so, and I can still do it here with my iPad, but I'm finding the iPad, drawing on the iPad to be, ugh, I just can't stand it.
Okay.
I have a Cintiq at my studio, which is the size of what would a normal picture book spread be, which makes it fabulous to work to size. You know, even if you're working digitally, it feels like you're working on paper.
Yeah.
And drawing on an iPad isn't doing it.
Yeah. See, I'm on the iPad, and I got one of the paper sheets, the screen that you can put on top, so that helps. And now I'm used to it. But at first, it was someone said, "What is that, Kelly? Can you be a bit more specific, Nancy?" Oh, it's Cintiq, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Focus. I can't look at the chat and talk at the same time. Now I'm used to it, and so I'm used to working on the smaller screen and just zooming in and out. I do find that when I get the work to a certain place in Procreate, I still import it into Photoshop to clean it up and do final touches, but I still don't have a large screen. And I've been debating, I'm like, oh, should I just go ahead and get a Cintiq? But I'm like, I don't think I'll want to do many more books digitally. Like
if you don't fall in love with it. Yeah. So the Cintiq, it's a drawing screen. So it's a computer screen that you can draw on that's touch sensitive, and it has a texture on it that makes it have a little bit of tooth, like a good paper would have like a little bit of tooth. So you can run all kinds of art programs. Mostly people use Photoshop, but so I just invested in it with what I got my rent in my studio, and I was like, all right, I'm going to invest in this giant, drawing machine. It weighs a ton. I couldn't set it up by myself. I couldn't lift it. I couldn't attach it to its stand by myself. I needed another set of hands.
Right.
But so that's what it is. It's a drawing screen for your digital art.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess can we see what you're working on, and we can kind of do some show and tell for everybody?
Sure. All right. I'm gonna put my screen share on, and I'm gonna try and bring up Photoshop, and I'll give you a little idea of what we have here. Okay. So, all right. Let me know if you can see the Photoshop. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, let's see. I'm working on a book. I'm just gonna have to toggle through here because I don't know where anything is. So the book is called The Smiley Family Album. This is a book that I started. There's a little image there. I actually wrote this book of almost 10 years ago, but then didn't show it to anybody because I thought this thing would never get published. It's the weirdest idea ever. It is essentially a found photo album. So if you can imagine, if I can find the image of let's see. If you can imagine a kid, right, see that old photo album in the back there? I collect old photo albums. So if you can imagine if a kid found a photo album, cracked open the cover, and inside they found this crazy family. Their name is the Smiley family, but you can tell from that one image right there. Is anybody smiling? No, not really. So the baby in the center of that picture is actually the main character of the book. It is this character right here. And as you turn the pages of the photo album, it's kind of her life story, and it's also the story of what we think family is, how family, there is no normal family, how we make our own family, how weird this family is. But it's also kind of the story of the history of photography and how it's changed over a good 100-year lifespan, which is pretty much the 20th century, leading up to, at the end of the book, there would be a selfie in the back.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm working on, and it's pretty involved because every page has several illustrations per page, if you can get the idea from that. So I have to do all these tiny little drawings.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea. If I stop the share, okay, cool. So
there you are.
The majority of the, luckily, when I started keeping my ideas for this book, I kept them in a sketchbook.
Nice.
So this came back with me from the studio. And so in this long sketchbook, and I'm not gonna, if you can see, there's just words and scribbles and ideas and thoughts, and throughout here there are, again, there's little character designs.
I love it.
And you can see in there's timelines of lives, and there's words. I went to the Kodak archives in Rochester, New York, and I spent 3 days, and I just wrote down anything that like words that make you think of cameras, like flash and omatic and pixie and snap and roll and flex. So all of those words that are not only fun to say, but they're all evocative of the idea of photography. And then the fun thing is, how do you mark the passage of time in a way that kids can hook into and understand and have fun with?
Yeah.
And I thought of the main themes when you look at old photo albums. You see cars, you see babies, you see weddings, and you see dogs. So every 7 years, I imagine the family is going to have a different dog.
Oh, that's beautiful, but also so sad.
And then every 7 years, the dog would be named Hercules, and then Hercules. So it's all different dogs, but always named Hercules. But then there would be one cat, and that cat would live forever.
Of course.
Until it was stuffed in the back, and there would be a picture of the cat up on the mantle.
I love it.
Yeah, so I mean, this week, what am I doing? I'm sketching. I'm sketching more characters, and I'm doing it in here, and then I'm also doing it on scraps of paper.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's important to not be precious about it. And I think a lot of people starting out especially want to get really precious with it, and it has to be perfect and this and that. And, I tell my students all the time, and myself, just get it out, make it disposable. Don't get married to the idea that this is going to be the thing. Just get it out of your head and then move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you have little bits of paper and different scrapbooks. I also love that you're a nerd and a weirdo. Thank you. That's wonderful. The 7-year dog thing is hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was a prerequisite for this job. I think you kind of had to. I think that's true. Is if you're gonna make books for kids, there has to be that part of you that never grew up.
Right.
That you can reach right inside and be like, yeah, let's get crazy. Just have fun. You gotta have fun, while you're doing this. So I saw somebody ask somewhere, is this sold? Is this book sold? Yes. This book is under contract with Balzer and Bray, who I usually publish with. So yeah. And yeah, and it's this book has also been like the book that kind of it's been both like my nemesis and also like my passion project. You know, It drives me crazy, but yeah, I
How long?
This is the best time to throw yourself into something like that.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I find too, like even with this time, like, you know, everyone is freaking out, and rightfully so. You know, there's so many different situations during this time. But for me personally, I'm like, this is my dream to like be able to teach in my pajamas. It's amazing.
Right.
I meet my students, so we're trying to figure it out, you know, but you know, at the end of the day, I think we're going to be okay. You know, it's going to be a rough time, but we're going to.
Yeah.
But
so what are you working on? What is your book that's
I'm working on a few things at a time, but I'll talk to you about the book that I'm writing and that I've written and I'm illustrating, and I just lost Zoom. So I will share my screen as well. There we go. Okay, can you all see it?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so this is Jump In, and it's the story about a community at play, and jump rope is sort of the thread that connects everything. And so I'll read this sort of stanza. Grab 2 ropes, make a loop, everyone line up, jump through the hoop. 2 becomes 4, 4 more is 8, rock back and forth, don't hesitate. First one's up, the Delancey twins, double Dutch divas, go girls, and then you turn the page and it's Jump In. So my process is kind of all over the place. These are all Procreate.
Yeah.
And I haven't taken any into Photoshop to completely finish them yet and touch them up. But this is all Procreate. And so I'll give people a sense of like what's going on with the layers. If I can't zoom, there's so many Zoom things popping up so far. Where's window? Okay. Why don't I have, there we go. My layers are down here. So for me, in working on this, the other thing with Photoshop and Procreate is I'm so used to Procreate now that I expect Photoshop to behave the same way. And it's just not. So like even now I'm like, wait, how do I turn off all the other layers?
Yeah.
I'm trying to turn off the layers so that you can see the sketch to kind of
yeah, I would start. Yep.
Built. And that'll be good enough for now. So that is essentially what you're seeing now is essentially my thumbnail, super loose, super messy. And I know a lot of illustrators spend a lot of time refining their drawings. I'm not a cartoonist. Like my initial training was really like representational and painterly, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, the struggle has been trying to figure out like how to work without the reference and still like believe in what I'm doing. And the answer to that has been to just kind of paint on top of the thumbnails and not worry about accuracy so much. Sorry, that head is left. But yeah, accuracy to a point and going from there.
You have all that knowledge in your brain. It's there. So it's just informing you know, when you're not working strictly with reference, you still have all that in your head.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just started playing around with clipping masks, and I can't find the layer because unfortunately my layers are not labeled professionally as they should be. So I'm like, wait, what layer is that? What layer is that? But with this, I've started playing around with like some handmade textures and things like that. I made like one brush for this book, and then everything else is just sort of sketches. Textures, and I'm scanning in, and a set of gouache brushes that I bought. So.
Oh yeah, no, it looks great. I mean, since I'm trying to learn Procreate too, I'm amazed. I'm amazed because I'm so just Photoshop that I find it frustrating. I find Procreate very frustrating.
I was on my last book, which is a child's book of prayers and blessings. It was all lino cut. And I was doing color studies in Photoshop to understand like which layer I was going to carve. And it was just so painful to be at this desk every day, every minute. I was like, I need to be able to work on my couch. And that's when I got the iPad.
Yeah.
And I started, with that, just laying in basic shapes and colors. And that really helped kind of, build some confidence. And so in doing this book, it's become a little easier. So I'm looking a lot at Italian for each book. I look at a different art movement. So this one, I'm looking a lot at
Oh, great. That's awesome.
They were jerks. Italian futurists, just their manifesto, all about men and industry and down everything else. So interesting, just the thinking behind the movement. But this is one of the main
oh, wow.
that I'm inspired by. So yeah, that's it. And then
I love the words too. Now we can even mention like that, you're an author and an illustrator. I love the words. I love double Dutch. I don't know how long it's been, but my mom taught me.
Nice.
Yeah, so I love to see the grandma hopping in because my mom was a double Dutch kid. So oh God, I actually, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, I actually bought a jump rope for exercise.
Nice.
And had a hard time, but eventually I found the rhythm again.
Yeah. Fun fact, I never learned how to double Dutch.
Wow. But you're gonna have to.
I know. I'm just gonna find some kids who are good at it and bring them to all of my author visits.
Yeah. That's great.
So yeah, and so from here I print everything out. So behind me, you can see the wall. I just put these cork boards up. I can send them.
Yeah, those are great.
I made them myself using Hentonite board. It's what they have in every art school, that push pin board. It's
yeah.
You can get it at Home Depot for $20. And then I went to Joann's and found sparkly cork fabric and wrapped the boards and put them up. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, no, I actually just hung up a big cork board at my studio.
Nice.
And have been pinning like crazy.
Yeah, I find that, for the working process, I need the space that I'm working in has to feel right, or I'm just not productive at all.
Yes. Let me see if I can find a picture of my studio.
I love that people are like, I just bought double Dutch ropes for my grandkids to get them through this COVID-19.
Let's see if I can find this. All right. So I will quickly, can you see that?
Yeah.
That's the building that my studio's in that I miss.
Nice.
Terribly. That's a big old mill. And like what you said, I have a little sitting area in my studio.
Oh, I love it.
So that's where, I'm trying to find where's my cork?
That looks like a living room. That's fancy. I love that.
Well, that's my old couch that I put there. Let's see if I can find the picture of my corkboard. Okay, here, this is what I was looking for. So, see,
nice.
That's right now. The top part is a book that I just wrote about. It's like a tiny mini thumbnail storyboard.
Yeah.
About growing up. My mom and dad owned a diner.
Nice.
When I was a kid. So I just wrote a picture book about growing up in my mom and dad's diner. So I have a lot of diner stuff. So just like you have to have the stuff around you. Okay,
yeah,
I want to feed my my creativity. So yeah, I have a whole bunch of things.
Even weird things one of my students, when I first moved to Baltimore, I had an open room and my drawing table was in a corner. And I could not focus in that space to save my life. And I realized it was too big. And so the trick for me was getting a small area rug and putting that down under the drawing space to just kind of wrangle me in and give me structure. And for whatever weird psychological reason, it made all the difference. And so, yeah, I think, little things like that are important for people to kind of look at, because some people are like, I'm just not inspired, or I just don't feel, it's really look at how you set things up and figure out what I'm a nestler. I like to be nestled into.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful to have a window here, even though I'm stuck in what is the spare room, storage room, pantry.
Yeah.
I have a window, and for me, the key is music.
Yeah.
I have to have music on. So I make a playlist, whatever I'm working on, I make I need to have the music that makes my brain go to the right place.
Yeah.
For each book.
For sure. I love that your family owned a diner. I feel like my life was very boring as a kid, like pretty pedestrian. Like my mom was like a single mom. She was a teacher. And that was like it, you know. So I'm
Where
always,
did you grow up? Where were you?
I grew up in Atlanta, in
Oh,
Georgia.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm always like, man, I wish that something more interesting happened to kind of pull from. So I find that stories that I like to write don't necessarily come from my experience. It's usually me responding to something else. So to jump in, it was in response to this Double Dutch commercial that I saw. And I was like, that would be a really interesting picture book. But now that I've written it and I've started the art, I'm like, oh, this is me, because I love to play with everyone. I was an only child, and I was always like, everybody come play with me, you know, and that's in the book. So it's interesting just to see kind of what comes up for you as a writer, as an illustrator, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved my childhood at the diner. Like I know I have an older brother who didn't love it as much, so it all depends on the kid, because it meant that we went there all the time, right? So we weren't doing sports as much, or you know, I had one afternoon a week I got to go to dance class, but then after dance class it was right to the diner. So it was a different way to grow up, you know, that you weren't always at home in the backyards and riding your bikes and stuff. We had bikes at the diner.
That's so cool.
They were kind of like a wooded, there was a wooded area behind, and we could ride our bikes a little bit, but yeah.
Wow, awesome. Someone just said, Shadra, get that book. Did my editor call you and tell you to chime in? Rude. I see Allison popping in.
Hi, yes, I wanted to let you know we are just streaming with questions in the Q&A, and I wonder if the two of you might take some time to kind of go through some of the questions there. Can you open up that dialog box that has the Q&A? And it looks like some of them are directed toward one or both of you. So if you want to take a look at some of them, and I'll pop back out.
Okay. Well, Allison, have you seen, because a lot are just like love notes. Have you seen any?
Sure. So one of the questions here says, Shadra, what happens when images invade your dreams or times when you are working on a project? That might have something to do with when future projects come to you as you're supposed to be working on one.
That happens a lot, unfortunately, but there's actually like a big file cabinet in my brain, and they just live there. And so for me, I have like, and you know, I want to work on a novel in verse and all these things. So I'll write a little bit, but I can't do anything because I'm stuck in this one project. And so that just gives me inspiration to get it done so I can move on to the next thing.
Here's one. Says, I don't know, this is a question. It says, I don't know if this is a question for here. I say yes, because it's here. But I don't understand how much of a picture book story is supposed to be by the illustrator. Is it just the details like green dress, or is it big chunks of the story?
That's a great question.
Great question. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's most of the time when you're given a manuscript, you are left to imagine. You are left to let your brain wander. Sometimes you'll be given some notes for what things could look like. More often than not, the editor will say to you, like, these are suggestions, but they're not written in stone if you are given art notes. And then you could also find yourself working in where you are given strict art notes. But usually, especially on the first pass, for me, when I'm given a manuscript, the first pass where I'm just doing my initial sketches, it's kind of let my brain go where it wants to. How about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I tend to work on stories where I'm not sort of pinned into the story itself. I like things that have a little more poetry to them so that I can tell my own story alongside the story that's being given in the text. I find that, I'm going to be a teacher now, there's counterpoint and duet. And so in the sense of duet, the images and the text work together and essentially like say similar things, where in counterpoint, they do different jobs, but still support the same idea. And so for me, I really like the idea of counterpoint and being able to play images against the text instead of just illustrating directly to the text. People are pretty hands-off with me as an illustrator. I'm not going to go into why those reasons are, but I get a lot of freedom. I just get the manuscript and it's go. And then it really does become a conversation between me, my editor, and my art director. I found that book covers are a little harder for me because that's when it gets really
right. That's when marketing comes in. Yeah.
Oh, marketing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I, as a rebel, I'm just like, oh, this idea is, I can do this so much better. So in that sense, I'll give them what they ask for. And then I'll give them a few more ideas that that come from me. And we usually come up with something really pleasant. So like let's see, I have it right under my computer. With Renee's Watson's book, Some Places More Than Others, my art director had some ideas and I was like, well, I have some ideas too. And they trusted me enough to produce this cover and people were really happy with it. So I do like to break the rules a lot.
That's what rules are for.
I guess.
Yeah.
Oh man, but the stakes aren't as high for me with illustration. Like, to be full disclosure, like I teach, and so I have supplemental income to support what I do as an illustrator. And so I feel like that lets me, frees my brain up a little bit to be able to get away with certain things, where if I were only an illustrator author, I would probably follow the guidelines a little bit more. So I think that's interesting. It's an interesting conversation that I have with my students about what type of life you want, how you want your art to kind of exist in the world. So yeah, there's enough of that.
How about just a few more questions here from this chat room? One of them is from Erin and Trada Kelly. Hi, Erin. Are there craft books that you would recommend for illustrators developing their style? Great question, Erin.
Not for style. I think style is such a dirty word, but this is the person who likes to take off hats and put on different hats. But I think for me, I tell my students, there's just the natural way that you draw. And so they're sort of building that muscle and drawing all the time. Figure out, like, how do you draw hands? Like, you specifically, what do your characters look like? And that's like the best practice. I think there are some books on technique that are really useful, like with watercolor and things like that. And then there are like general books on how to make picture books. One is the Encyclopedia of Writing and Illustrating for Children. That's the one I use in my classroom. Of course, Writing with Pictures by Yuri Shulevitz is one of the Bibles that we kind of go by. But in terms of developing style, I would be careful. But Kelly, you have a very distinct way to draw as a cartoonist. So what's your advice on that?
Well, I think that it depends on where you are in your journey. So if you're at the beginning of this journey and you're literally trying to figure out like how, you have to kind of try everything and find out what you love. So first, your exploration is media, right? At a certain point, and look at everything. What I used to do was go and just pull like a giant stack of picture books off of the shelves at Barnes and Noble, and go through them and decide which ones spoke to me, separate them out of the pile, put them aside, put all the other ones back, then go through the ones that spoke to me. And I would sit with my sketchbook and I would map them and see how the person who was making the picture book that I liked worked their way through. And I would map them with shapes and things. How did they work their way through a story? What was it about it that I really liked? I did that, I think it took me about 7 or 8 years between the time I decided I wanted to get published, I wanted to enter children's books, to when I got published. And along the journey, I was like a vacuum and I sucked everything in. I learned everything was to learn. And then at a certain point, I had to shut that all out.
Oh boy.
and I had to trust myself.
Yep.
I had to trust my brain. I had to trust my hand.
Yep.
And I just had to go.
Yep.
And when I did that is when I got published.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's still something that I learned to do over and over again, is just trust myself. It's so yes, that's a great advice. I used to look at one of my favorite books of all times is right here on my table, because I like to surround myself with my favorite books while I'm working, is Come on Rain by John Muth and Karen Hess. The writing in this thing is just amazing. But when I was starting out, value was always a struggle for me. And so I used to look at this book and take a pencil and just do value studies based on his paintings. And it's so funny, when my first book came out, a reviewer was like, there's a little bit of John Muth in there, there's a little bit of this, but something that's all her own. And I was like, oh, they found me out. But it was so helpful. So to talk about books, let me turn. This is my studio bookshelf here, and I have, like, let's see, books all over the table.
Yeah.
And then there's another big bookshelf downstairs where I keep picture books. So for me, I think another piece of advice is just be a fan as much as you're trying to be in the game of making books. So yeah.
So how about 2 more questions here? We'll do one that is definitely from some of our friends who are writers that are listening in today to the Illustrator Chat. And it is, what kind of illustration notes do you love?
That's awesome. Keep going. This is amazing. How did you come up with this? Those are the only notes I love.
I once had a note. Well, I can't remember if it was a note or was it it might have been in the manuscript. There were these words that said, she has hair like curly parsley. And like, I thought, like, that was great. They didn't tell me what the hair looked like. They didn't say, like, the girl has to have, like, it has hair like curly parsley, you know? Things like that are okay. They still leave it up and open to your interpretation. But
right.
Yeah, but it really is a good feeling to feel trusted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I misthought that. When you said art notes, you mean the ones that art directors give you before you start the book.
Okay.
My favorites are, we love what you did in X project. We're looking for something similar. Or essentially, my favorite art note is just, we can't wait to see what you come up with. And that's it. So I will say I have one framed in my office after a book was done. This is from Laurent Lynn at Simon & Schuster after we finished the Book of Prayers, which is Lina Cut. And it was just a lovely note to say, you know, I'll read it. Gorgeous, stunning, poetic, thoughtful, filled with emotion. Thank you. That just made all the pain and suffering so
worth it. Yeah.
And the beauty of this business is it's a business of people who are usually deeply caring and thoughtful and sensitive. And so things like this, when you're suffering in the studio for months and months over art, then people really appreciate what you do if it makes it all the best. So yeah.
All right, and I'll make this the last one, even though there's 45 questions. I'm sorry we won't get to them all this morning, but one of them is about your daily practice or your daily schedule. So you've touched a little bit on projects as a whole, but what does it look like maybe from day to day? And you've both mentioned family responsibilities and other responsibilities. So what does that balance look like?
Well, I will say one of the byproducts of our recent kooky life situation has been that I've made it a point. Normally, I'm not a morning person. I'll just put that out there. I'm the kind of person who stays up till 2 a.m. working. I usually like to work when the rest of the world is asleep.
Yeah.
Now the rest of the world is So I've actually found over the last 10 days since I've been kicked out of my studio that I'm getting up early. I'm sitting at my desk because I want the sunshine on my face. And I'm drawing.
Nice.
Which is totally not my usual, schedule. I may not necessarily be working on the book, but I'm drawing. I'm doodling, I'm letting my brain rev up a little bit before I work on the book. So will I go back to that afterwards? I kind of hope not. With the rented studio, it's about a 20-minute drive from my house, the rented studio. So what I was doing is I was like watching the clock tick down. Oh, it's 10 p.m. Oh, it's 11 p.m. How late am I going to stay at the studio and then have to drive 20 minutes home? So if I could do this shift, if that's a byproduct of this weird world now that we're in, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah. Did you have studio mates, or were you solo in your studio?
I'm solo, but I can bring in another person. There's more than enough room.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, my schedule, I saw a question about work-life balance when it comes to having a full-time job too. I am an early riser. I'm up between 7 and 7:30. And if I sleep in till 8 or 8:30, I'm freaking out because I'm like, I'm burning the morning. And that's like my most productive time.
Right.
So I usually try to get out with the monster. That's the monster. And take him for a walk, and then I'll run. Like this morning I ran and things like that. When I'm teaching, it can be tricky. I have night classes I have one night class from like 4 to 10. And so I try to get up really early and get some work done, and then go to class. But by 8 o'clock, my brain has melted out of my ears. And I always apologize to the students. But yeah, I like to wake up early and get started. Even if that means I wake up early, I'm sitting in my studio and scrolling Pinterest for an hour and a half, I'm still in here ready to go, right? And so I can get to it. And yeah, one thing that really helps me stay focused during the week, I don't watch television at all. It's unless I just need to like decompress at night with TV and a glass of wine or whatever. But I've learned that I can't have the television on. It will suck me in. And on weekends, I let myself watch a little bit, but I'm not interested so much there. So I don't have kids. It's just me and the monster. So I don't have that extra responsibility.
Right.
It's a whole heaping lot. So yeah, I'm pretty free to be as flexible as I need to be, but I do find that being up in the morning is the best time for me to work.
Since I have a 20-year-old, so imagine, so my kid is a second-year college student. The first year of college, I did kind of go like, wait, where are you? You know, but this sophomore year of college, it's definitely gotten into this. All this time is mine. Like. Yeah. My time, and I can focus. Yeah,
like when they were younger, like I know a lot of working people who have kids try to figure out that battle.
So when they were really young, the first 4 years I really didn't work. I attempted to freelance. So I used to work in cartoon licensing. I was a character artist.
Nice.
So I tried to freelance, but diapers and deadlines do not mix. I mean, it's a very, very hard thing to have a real little one and meet those deadlines. But when they went into kindergarten, I was like raring to go. I was raring to draw. And so by the time they went into first grade, it's like, all right, I want to try to get into children's books. So I would make a schedule for myself. And the schedule was built around their school hours. Right? So when they were at school, I was at my drafting table. When they came home from school, I knew there would be no work done until they went to sleep.
Right.
And so when they went to sleep, I was back at the drafting table. Yep. So that's why I started that pattern of working till 2 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. When I lived in New York and I had a part-time job as a designer at Bloomsbury Publishing, that was 3 days a week, but 9 to 5. But I was so dedicated to like being in my studio by 6:30 and working till like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I think that's another reason I stay busy and have so many other things that I like to do, because it forces me to like, I just need wrangling. It forces me to wrangle myself into a time block to be able to focus on this thing and then move on to the next. So I get that. I think that's so important to talk about just life-work balance as a parent, because so many people are in that position and trying to figure out like how to make it work.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so flippant to just be like, yo, just commit. But we need to acknowledge that that's not easy.
Yes. Right now, I think that the best thing is to give in.
Mm-hmm.
Give in and go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do one drawing a day, that's great.
Yeah.
Just draw something. Get your imagination, just keep it percolating.
Yeah.
You know, that's if that's all you can do, that's awesome. And it's going to help you too. If you can find 15 minutes in your day right now,
yeah,
to write or to draw, that's you know, that's just going to help you get through this. It's going to help you stay in.
Yep.
Trying to, you know, write and illustrate. So yeah.
And do it for fun, you know, take the
Right.
pressure off. Like, you're not trying to prove anything to anybody. Like, you are an artist because you love making art, and that's it.
Yeah.
So just really live in that.
We had one last question before I switch things over to George and then to the prompt. And this is an important one, and only if you feel comfortable. Could you share with these very visual people on the call today what your t-shirts say, because they're just dying to know about your t-shirts.
All right.
So
Okay. Is it me?
First, Kelly. First.
All right. So it says, here's the brain connection.
I love it.
Here's the brain. It was from, I saw the David Byrne show on Broadway. David Byrne from Talking Heads.
Yes.
It was a revelation.
Sure.
And I sat behind Michael Stipe from REM when he sat down in front of me, and I'm like, I'm here to see David Byrne, and I'm sitting behind Michael Stipe. David Byrne, Michael Stipe, David Byrne, Michael Stipe. It was like 1987 exploding in my brain. Yeah, so that's my t-shirt.
I love it. Mine is purely publicity.
Oh!
Jumped in studio. And
Wow.
Can't see the back. Wait.
That is genius.
Thank you. I had them made for an event that I was doing, and yeah, I sold this manuscript many, many years ago. Let's just not even go there. But yeah, it's the name of my studio and the first book that I'm writing and illustrating. So
That's fabulous.
thanks.
Awesome. All I can tell you about my shirt is I've been wearing it for the last 5 days since I'm not seeing many people. I don't know how good my internet connection is, but you were talking about resources, and I did want to try to share just some of the resources we have through the Highlights Foundation. And the first one is our podcast, Into the Words. Kelly, you did a podcast with us with Steve Light, and that was really funny because you dive into talking about your shared last names, but not really having known each other until recently. And Shadra, you also did a podcast with us. So anyone who wants to join more content and listening, we've got our podcast. You can download that. Also, let's see, on the Highlights Foundation website, to learn more about our programs, the Highlights, these HF Gather sessions, we have them at the top of our website under programs. And you can sign up for Monday's meditation. Wednesday, Sarah will be talking to Heidi Stempel. And next Friday, Shadra, looks like you have Pat Cummins on with you. So that'll be a lot of fun. Let's see. Also, we are posting all of these to our blog page, so you can take a look there. And finally, a quick shout out, if you're enjoying this and you've got the opportunity, we'd love to see a donation. You can just text HF Gather to this number, 41444, or pop over to our website. We have a donate page there. Certainly love any support you can offer, but it's just, for me, it's been really awesome to have this time together and connect. I drove out to Boyd's Mills yesterday to check on things, and it was heartbreaking just to drive in there. And we should be teaming with people this time of year, and people getting their creativity on. It was just quiet and sad. So it's nice to at least connect virtually here.
Yeah.
Can I mention something real quick?
Please.
Okay. So, as you know, George and Shadra, the chicken coop at the Highlights Foundation is now the art studio. And I was fortunate enough to spend, I think, about 9 days working on this book in the chicken coop. So you mentioned Steve Light and I. So Steve Light and I decided that we wanted to put some chickens in the chicken coop. So I would love it if any illustrator who passes through the doors of the chicken coop would leave a chicken behind. So this is Steve Light's chicken.
Oh, I love it.
So this is a little 4x6 card. Right, and then here's my chicken.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're hoping that any illustrator who passes through will leave a little 4x6 chicken, and maybe we could actually fill your chicken coop with some chickens.
I love it.
We'll take it. That sounds great. So send us off with, what is it that you're sending us off with?
It's a poem that I thought would be really inspiring for people at this time of year. And I know we talked about a live draw, but drawing in front of people is my biggest nightmare, to be quite honest. I'm such a don't look at me illustrator. So I'm going to read it. It's April is a Dog's Dream by Marilyn Singer. And I will show you Lucky while I read it. Ugh. Hey, Lucky. All right. I can't do that. I can't hold the laptop and do it. Okay, I'm just going to read it. Sorry. April is a dog's dream. The soft grass is growing. The sweet breeze is blowing. The air all full of singing feels just right. So no excuses now. We're going to the park to chase and charge and chew, and I will make you see what spring is all about.
So last night I actually sat and I doodled a little bit, and these are very scribbly doodles, but Shadra had sent me the poem. So I just did some scribbles, if you could see.
I love
it.
it.
So there's, the one on the bottom is funny. There's a dog running through the newly grown flowers, dragging the kid with the leash. Yeah, so prompts are good. They just stimulate the imagination.
Adding your characters, I'll show, oh, I can't, hold on. I don't live draw, but I'll show you another page from the book. And
there you go.
Lucky has found his way into the book. He was not supposed to be there, but I was like, these people need a dog in here, and it makes me so happy. So there we go. Well, this has been so much fun, Kelly. We haven't met before, but this has been such a great introduction. I really enjoyed talking.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to get to meet you. I hope we get to do it in person.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you both so very, very much. This was such a wonderful way to start the Friday together, gathered.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too. Go draw something, everybody.
Bye.
Stay well. Love and kisses.
Bye.
Bye.